Welcome, new and old friends. I just have a couple things to say, and then the stories will begin. Before you drift off into the dream realm, please remember to like, subscribe, share, and comment. If you'd like to find out about my social links, my website, how to help the channel, check the description box. Now turn off your lights, make sure your doors and windows are locked. It's time to dream. Just to give you a warning, this does have voice acting in it, but there's no real sound effects. I try to make it as smooth as I can for you. But if louder voices and voice acting will wake you up, I highly recommend a different video. And with all that being said, let's get on with the story. I search for things people are too scared to believe in. By Cole Blaze K. To give you a quick summary of what it is that I do is kinda complicated. I'm the person that goes searching for things most are too scared to believe in, whether they are willing to admit it or not. I search for wendigos, aswags, kikimora, and other things that I'm not sure of. I keep a whole journal filed with everything I have encountered. But nothing compares to the being that I recently encountered, the thing that made me step away for a bit. It started with a rumor I heard in a bar in the middle of nowhere nonetheless. I had stopped in right after a case of mine that just ended, one involving a supposed Jersey Devil sighting, but that's for another time. The reason I stopped, you may ask, though, is because the sign for the bar a few miles back kept blinking repeatedly, as if something was telling me to stop. The inside was a quaint place, almost like your typical old-fashioned movie bar, hustling, bustling, and happening all around. One thing did stick out, though, a light dimming frequently around a couple patrons. I made my way over and stopped nearby to hear what they were talking about. I only got a couple words before I spoke to the man talking later that night about a shadowy figure. Once things died down a bit, I decided to approach the man myself.
Hey man, I couldn't help but overhear you saying something about a shadowy figure.
The man looked at me for a long time without saying a thing. To cut the silence, I spoke up once again.
Listen, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but this is kinda the stuff I look into. I'm a investigator of sorts. Take a look.
I opened up my jacket and pulled out the compendium I've been working on. Gently setting it on the table, I slid to the man, saying,
Have a look for yourself.
I walked to the bartender, ordered 2 drinks, and walked back to the man, handing him one. He took it and looked up and said,
Alright, I believe you. But I'm just gonna tell you a few things.
Do you mind if I record?
He looked sheepishly and finally spoke up.
As long as you don't use my name or this place's name.
Works for me.
I said, pulling out my audio recorder and loading in a new cassette. Audio transcript, case log 26. Name, John Doe. Location, not on file.
Ready when you are.
This creature, or whatever it was, it's not like anything here in this book. I know you got a few pages on shadow folk, but it's not like that. The thing was black. Just pure black.
Pure black? Not like a see-through-ish black or an almost black man.
No, not at all like that. It was just black. Like nothing was there. It looked like all black cut out of a man. No features, nothing. Just darkness. Like nothing I've ever seen before.
So you're saying that you came across something that was just pure black. Where did you find it and what did it do?
The man just sat there for a few minutes looking down as he contemplated his next words. Although he looked terrified, sweat started to appear on his brow.
Listen, man, if it's too hard to remember or think of, I get it.
It's not that. I remember everything. I wish I didn't. The things it did and the things it showed me were... I wouldn't wish it upon anyone, not even a stranger like you.
What do you mean? What did it do? Where can I find it?
You could tell the eagerness in my voice to learn more.
I won't tell you where it is, but let's just say I haven't been to this bar every day for the last few months. It told me things and showed me. Oh God, the things it showed me. Everyone is dying, the world is on fire, and...
The man's head fell into his hands as he began weeping, almost uncontrollably.
God damn it! Not again! I think it's time for you to leave.
The bartender yelled from across the counter. Auto script case log 26 over. After consoling the man and bringing him outside to wait for a taxi, he finally told me where it had all happened. It did take a lot of convincing, though. For the safety of others, I will not disclose location. But I wasn't even sure I'd find it. The place was interesting. The drive was as well. The man's instructions were pretty clear. Drive here, turn at tree, turn, and boom. It was a small, quaint town? Settlement? I don't know what to call it. Kind of a small communion. 3 buildings, a post office, a bar, and a rundown church. But neither of those were what I was after. A mile past the ghost town was a farm, or what was left of one. The barn collapsed, broken fences, and my target, the run-down house. The sun was setting as I finished my way down the long driveway. As I parked my truck, I got an unsettling feeling and a flash of one of my cases came to mind. It dealt with an old farmhouse like this. The family inside was all over the place, to say the least. Inside the living room was what seemed to be a man on his knees, but as I entered the room, it turned around, baring its teeth. It wasn't a man, but a witchigay. It charged at me, throwing me to the side and running out the door. I didn't see it again, but that family, what happened to them, always stuck. Seeing that really made me contemplate leaving and saying fuck this, but I needed to know what would drive a man to break down to that point. Cautiously, I walked up the steps, peering in the window to make sure no one was inside. Thankfully, the place was empty. I turned on my flashlight and reached for the doorknob until I heard, "Don't," very quietly. I shot around to see nothing. Thinking it was all in my head, I turned the knob and went in. As soon as I entered the house, I fell. I fell for what seemed to be minutes, sliding down this pitch-black hole, head screaming and feeling hands grab and scratch at me. Feeling their nails rip and tear at my flesh, the warm blood running across my skin before finally hitting the ground. I awoke sitting on a chair and something standing across from me, waiting for my vision to come into focus. I was in what looked like a root cellar with a few lights barely on around the room. Trying to gain my composure, I finally heard something speak.
"You come seeking answers, and now you are here."
I looked up to see, I'm not sure what. It wasn't just black. It was as if there was nothing there. A cutout of a man was standing in front of me. It was like the absence of light. No features or anything could be seen. The light from my flashlight didn't even appear on him. The dread resonating off of him made me want to scratch my eyes out to not feel it anymore. I quickly pulled out my recorder and pressed record before the being finally spoke up once again. Audio transcript case log 26. Name, entity, location, cellar?
"I am the essence of light in the absence of good. I am only darkness."
So, you're the devil?
"No, you fucking idiot. I am the embodiment of evil."
Sounds a lot like the devil to me.
Your Christian beliefs are not real. Every religion is wrong. When you die, there is no light. There is no heaven. No hell. Only darkness. You become a part of me. Before there was anything, there was me. And when everything ends, I will be all that remains. You are an insignificant speck in the infinite, always dying universe. Let me show you.
The being reached what seemed to be a hand at me, and I quickly scooted back, avoiding his grasp.
What if I don't want to see?
That is a first. Every being, person, or thing I have met has never rejected me, never rejected the truth. All those that have searched have never turned away.
But how am I supposed to believe you? You could just be lying. I saw what you did to B. He was a mess after running into you. I mean, you did also say you're the embodiment of evil.
What's more evil? Lying to you about what's really out there, or showing you the truth of everything?
But what is this so-called truth of yours? What will I see?
What you see depends on who you are. Some see good things, some see bad. It depends on the person.
That doesn't really make sense.
Do you want to see or not?
Fine. Fuck it. I'm in.
Audio transcript case log 26 end. With that, the being placed its hand on my head, and the most immeasurable things happened. It was as though I was seeing the past, present, and future all at once. The creation of everything, every universe, person, and plant. Then the destruction of it all. I felt 1,000 deaths and heard 1,000 pleas, but somehow focused on one thing. One of my first encounters with something. One of the dominoes that made the rest fall. It was Saturday, June 22nd, 1996. I was barely a boy, only 6 years old. My father just came home from work as my mother was finishing up supper. As we were eating, a loud screech came from outside, shattering the windows of our house. My father quickly got up and grabbed a knife before a beautiful woman with black hair stopped him. She wore a tattered dress, looked malnourished, and was covered in cuts. My father stood still, almost in a trance, and was unable to move. The woman inched closer, grabbed his head, and turned it to the side. My mother is wailing and telling me to look away before the woman spoke.
I'm sorry you have to see this.
With that, the woman got close to his ears, screaming in it as blood came out of his eyes and ears. Not only were my mom's ears bleeding too, but so were my own. I passed out soon after and woke up in the hospital, just to be told I was an orphan. More flashes came and went. I soon was in the deepest parts of what could have only been hell, feeling whips hit my back and creatures dig their nails deep into my calves and pull down, only for it to reset and happen again and again. Then being nailed to a wall and all my nails pulled off. These were some sadistic fuckers, I thought, as the last nail got ripped off, only for them to grow back again. I woke up in bed, gasping for air as I shot up.
Are you okay? What happened?
I heard my wife say while she hugged me.
Just another nightmare. I think my medicine is messing with me.
I replied, getting up.
I'm gonna go make some coffee and get a little work done. Go back to bed.
I said before kissing her on the head and heading to the kitchen. It was 7 a.m. and the sun was just beginning to rise. I started a pot of coffee and grabbed my laptop to do my annual reports that were due next week. I was finally happy and living the life I wanted. It took years of therapy after my parents' death in that accident, but it was worth it. I finally had the woman of my dreams and 2 beautiful kids. Life was good. I awoke all of them with chocolate chip pancakes before going out and getting some groceries. While at the grocery store, I felt something watching me, but anytime I looked around, nothing was there. Until finally, in the corner of my eye, I saw the silhouette of a person. Almost like a cutout of a person. My head started ringing and my vision was getting blurry before the next thing I knew I was waking up gasping for air again. This time, not waking my wife. The worst thing was, I felt my body take control and grab a pillow. I couldn't do anything but scream in my mind as the pillow was placed over her head and I watched her fight until she became limp. It happened over and over until I finally realized what was happening. I was punishing myself. I lost her long ago, but she's not dead. She just didn't want to be part of what I was doing. Something was pulling my strings. Flashes of light and a hand gripping my head tightly before waking up in a forest. Slowly getting up, I notice that I'm clad in armor. Hearing screams, I look up and watch as a vicious beast tears apart people wearing both the same and different colors than me. A werewolf. But that's not possible. They've been extinct since the Dark Ages. Then I remembered where I am and what I'm wearing.
Fuck!
I say as I look up and meet the hand of a bloody claws right in my face. Falling down, I feel my jaw slack and see my ear on the ground. Trying to get up, I feel the beast slash on my Achilles before feeling its mouth close around the back of my neck. I woke up on the floor panting for breath, not knowing what happened or what reality I'm in. Audio transcript case log 26. Name, identity. Location, cellar?
Have you had enough? Are you now willing to accept that what you do is for nothing?
Why is it for nothing, though?
Because in all realities and timelines, you die a horrible death. You will never live a happy life, only a life covered in darkness. Meeting me solidifies that.
Caught you.
What did you say?
If you were a being that was here at the beginning and end, then how would you know we would meet?
We will always meet. I have been guiding your hand this whole way. I have put all the pieces in motion. I am the one you meet before or after death. What don't you understand?
How you supposedly know everything when you don't?
Well then, I will have to show you everything once more.
For the first time, I could see facial features in the entity, sucking in eyes and a mouth full of sharp white teeth as it bore its hand towards me. It seemed ecstatic in the thought of torturing me more. But what it saw as torture, I saw as learning it. Everything has a weakness. I just need to find it.
Try your best.
Audio transcript case log 26, end. Locking my daughter out on the porch seemed like a great way to teach a lesson about curfew. By the third search party, it was all I could think about. I don't know what's happening anymore. By Cole Blaze K. I grew up in a small town where nothing really ever happened. It was a nice, quiet place, low crime, about 900 people, and on the edge of a beautiful forest. At least it was nice until a couple months ago. It started when a kid went missing after school. He'd gotten off his bus, and that was the last anyone saw of him. Of course, a huge investigation occurred and rumors were being spread, but nothing really ever came of it. The rumor mill was big, though. You see, even when I was a kid, there was a rumor about something that would take people into the woods and eat them. Parents used to say it to scare their kids into coming home early, so I didn't really believe in it. Although it was said that anytime something like that happened, a horrific scream would come from the forest. But I never heard it. At least, not until after that kid went missing. I was walking downtown when a screeching noise came from the forest, almost like an old broken tornado siren screeching out its last life. I looked around to see if anyone else could hear it, but no one else was around. Almost like the town was empty. Then, when the sound ended, people were exiting stores and acting as though nothing happened. Although, one person came up to me and said,
You heard that, right? You have to tell me you heard that.
I did. What was that?
It was the scream of someone who became lost.
Became lost? What do you mean they became lost?
Can't talk anymore. They're watching. Don't trust anyone. You have to get out of here.
And with that, the man ran into a nearby alley, disappearing out of sight.
Who was that?
I heard coming from behind me. I turned to see Chris, one of the town's police officers, and a good friend.
I don't know. I haven't seen him before.
Well, it's a small town. If I see him again, I'll be sure to give him a talking.
You do that, Chris. I gotta go though. Nice seeing you.
With that, I was off and continued my normal day-to-day monotonous life. That was until more missing people signs kept popping up. You see, it's one thing when one sign comes up every once in a while, but it's another when 13 have gone missing the last 3 months. Something was wrong, and I was determined to figure it out. After the 7th sign popped up, that's when I decided to give Chris a visit at the station, but he was nowhere to be seen. The clerk told me that he went on vacation, but that didn't seem right. Chris was someone who loved his job and loved working. In the last 10 years I've lived here, he only went on vacation twice. The other thing that seemed off was the way the clerk spoke.
I'll let him know you stopped when he gets back.
Something about her voice was off. It didn't sound human. It sounded as though an AI was learning to speak but still had some hiccups. That right there put me on edge. It wasn't the first time I noticed it either. The last few months I've noticed people's voices sounding like that. Maybe I'm going crazy though. I hadn't been sleeping well and my insomnia had been catching up to me. Yeah, that's it. I'm just tired. I need some sleep.
Wake up.
I heard in my ear as I shot up from my bed, scanning around the room, only to find nothing like usual. That was the 4th time that I had heard it in the last month, and I was getting pretty annoyed. It was around 3:16 in the morning that I would wake up hearing something say that. I got up and searched my room like usual, looking for whatever spoke but could never find it. Then, because of that, I would be awake for the rest of the day. It pretty much just became a routine. I'll let you know if anything changes. It's November 2nd and the weather is getting pretty chilly outside. The last missing person was found today and is being questioned. The police department want me to come and speak to him. I guess being the only psychologist in town puts you on the spot. I'm heading there at noon to speak with him. As I was heading to the police station, random people kept watching me every second as I passed. It was as though these few had their eyes glued on me, waiting for something. Once I reached the station and got in, an officer greeted me right away.
This way.
He said, leading me into the interrogation room.
What's his name?
I asked.
Greg Farlick.
the officer replied, opening the door.
Also, no taking notes or bringing in any sharp objects. So hand them over now.
Confused, I hand the officer my belongings and enter the room.
Mr. Farlick, I heard you wished to speak with me?
The man sitting in front of me looked up from his hands, and I recognized who it was. It was the man who talked to me after the first screech was heard.
What are you doing here? You need to leave.
What do you mean? Why do I need to leave?
These people aren't who they say they are. You need to get out of here.
Entertaining the man, I asked.
And how do you get out of here?
Kill yourself.
Excuse me?
You need to kill yourself. Do it to escape. Otherwise, they'll keep you here. Feed off of you. Here, let me help.
With that, the man lunged at me, gripping his hands around my neck.
You'll see. You'll soon see.
He said as we fell down, his hands still choking the life out of me. In the matter of seconds, officers rushed in, pulling the man off me and screaming at me to leave. The last thing I heard as the door closed behind me was,
Burn them all.
I couldn't sleep at all that night after that. I kept hearing voices and skittering noises around the house. That guy had gotten into my head to make me think I was crazy. It was about 4 a.m. when I heard a knock on the door. It was Chris. I hadn't seen him in a month.
Where the fuck have you been?
I said, annoyed at him.
Vacation?
That's all you're gonna say? Vacation?
Chris just stared at me blankly, like I had said something that offended him.
What?
Can I come in?
He said, interrupting my next question.
Sure. Come on in.
I replied, opening the door more and motioning him inside.
What did he tell you?
He said sharply, walking into my kitchen.
What do you mean?
The man at the station. What did he tell you?
Something about this whole altercation seemed off. Chris seemed off. And the town seemed off. These last few months hadn't felt normal. A lot of townfolk didn't act like the way they used to. And it all sounded off. It was really starting to get to me. Chris began snapping at me while saying,
Tell me what he said.
Nothing. He just attacked me as soon as he saw me.
Fine, don't tell me the truth. I'll just have to get it out of you.
With that, Chris pulled out his baton and began marching towards me.
What the fuck are you doing?
I said right before getting hit in the head and falling to the ground. Flashes of things I don't remember coming to the forefront of my mind. Hearing the third screech, walking into the forest. An old abandoned house, skittering in the trees, something crawling down my throat. All that washed away though as the second baton hit me in the ribs. An audible crack was heard as Chris said once more,
Tell me what he saw.
He was cut off as I kicked his knee inward, causing him to collapse. I quickly got up and began running outside. As I entered my car, I saw Chris running towards me as if his backwards knee had never even happened. I slammed the car into reverse and sped out backwards, out of my driveway until I hit something, or something hit me. Stopping to assess the situation, I saw a couple of townsfolk who'd been running and slamming themselves in my car. One even grabbed on the top railing and began slamming her head multiple times into the passenger side window until it spidered.
What the fuck?
I screamed, and she began pushing her face into the window, causing the glass to cut away and peel off parts of her face.
I'm gonna get ya,
she said before I said, fuck this, kicked it into drive and sped off. I was heading for the town exit, which prompted me to go through our main street and cross a bridge. While at Main, I saw a building and car on fire, as well as 20 or 30 people all fighting and tearing each other apart. more of them ramming themselves into my car or in front of it, hoping to stop me.
What the fuck is going on?
I screamed as the man threw a brick at my car, shattering my windshield. I just need to get to the bridge. I kept saying that to myself to get me through the carnage. It was another minute or so when I was there, but boy was I in for a surprise. As I reached the middle of the bridge, cop lights appeared on the other side. They created a barricade. I decided to kick it into reverse, but as I looked into my rearview mirror, I saw Chris's cruiser, along with 20 bloodied up townspeople behind him.
Fuck. What do I do? What do I do?
I said to myself, trying to think of a solution.
Come on, man. It's not that bad here. Come back into town and we can sort this all out.
I heard over the intercom. It was Chris's voice.
We can make you forget all this ever happened. Just come out with your hands up.
That was it. I lost. There was nothing I could do. I was trapped and wanted it to be all over.
Wake up.
I heard in my ear as I shot up from my bed, scanning around the room, only to find nothing, like usual. That was the 5th time that this has happened in the last month, and I was getting pretty annoyed. It was always 4:60 in the morning, and I would wake up hearing something say that. I got up and searched my room, like usual, looking for whatever spoke, but could never find it. Then, because of that, I would be awake for the rest of the day. It's pretty much just become my routine. Something was off, though. I looked at my clock again, 3:16. That's not right, it just said 4:16. With that, flashes of previous night came to mind. Chris hitting me, the lady peeling off her face in my window, and then waking up. It's not right. Nothing's right.
What is this place?
I said to myself before falling asleep again.
Wake up.
I heard in my ear as I shot up from my bed, scanning around the room, only to find nothing like usual. That was the 3rd time that this has happened in the last month, and I was getting pretty annoyed. It was always 2:60 in the morning, and I would wake up hearing something saying that. I got up and searched my room like usual, looking for whatever spoke, but could never find it. Then, because of that, I'd be awake for the rest of the day. It's pretty much just become my routine.
Wait, 2:16?
I said to myself, that's not normal. Previous night affairs began flashing in my head. Me heading to the woods, something crawling down my throat, Chris hitting me, bridge, death. As I stood up, I suddenly felt dizzy, almost falling onto the floor.
Stay awake.
I said to myself, pinching my neck to keep me awake.
Honey, come back to bed.
I heard call out from behind me.
I will in a minute, sweetie. Just going to the bathroom.
I called out of impulse. As I finished up in the bathroom, I looked in the mirror and saw handprints on my neck.
How did those get there?
I said as I stroked them.
Honey.
I heard from the doorway.
What are you doing?
Sorry, I was just checking.
As I looked back at the mirror, the marks were gone, as if nothing had happened.
I'll be going to bed in a sec.
She giggled as she walked back towards the bedroom. Something wasn't right. I needed to figure out what was happening, but not after some rest. I awoke standing on the ledge of the bridge, cops on one side, bloody townspeople on the other, Chris's voice over the megaphone again.
Don't! You don't know what you're doing. You'll kill us all. Just step down and we can make you forget.
Contemplating for a second, I stepped back half a step, previous night flashing through my head.
That's it, man. It'll be okay.
No.
I said as I launched myself off the bridge. They say the first thing you think of when you jump is regret. Boy, is that right. Feeling myself fall faster and faster almost made me pass out until... I awoke groggy in a dark room, barely able to comprehend what was going on. Skittering on the floor and a scratching noise happening. But as I focused more, I saw a tube pulsating in front of me, going up to something on the ceiling. Shitty thing is, that tube was also down my throat. Gagging, I slowly reached up and grabbed it. As soon as my hands touched it, I heard a little shriek that began to get louder and louder as I pulled the tube out. The thing must have been 5 feet long until it finally came plopping out. I still had one hand on it, and it lunged towards my mouth again. Little eyes and a mouth full of sharp tentacled teeth met me face to face. I squeezed harder and threw it onto the ground before stomping on it. Once I was done, I looked around and saw that I was in a basement full of people. At least 40, all either sitting or leaning against the wall, white tubes down their throat. Sadly, I can't say I went and saved all of them. I don't think I could have. The majority of them almost looked mummified. Some pretty much were. Skittering could be heard coming from the room across from me. Little creatures poured in through the doorway, making their way towards me. The screeching and squealing was almost unbearable. Looking around, trying to find a way out, I saw something that made my heart drop. It was Chris, although he looked a lot older than the last time I saw him. His beard was unkempt and his uniform was almost black from dust. My saving grace. Once I reached him, I began shaking him profusely, but to no avail.
I'm so fucked,
I said right before my eyes met his service pistol. I grabbed that and began shooting at the mass heading towards me. I hit a few, heard screeches, and the rest scurried their way out of the room.
You need to stop,
I heard coming from across the room. I turned to see an almost mummified man sitting on what appeared to be a throne, made of I don't even want to know what. As I looked around, I noticed that all the tubes led to one central mass, and that central mass had a tube leading to that thing.
You'll doom our whole species.
It spoke again.
Why should I care after what I just discovered?
You were not supposed to wake up. You were supposed to feed us for years to come. We only take when need be, but when others come looking, we like to feast.
What are you doing to these people?
Feeding.
Feeding of what?
Emotions. They are a delicacy. The only sad thing is that we have to virtually make husks of you. How about this? You leave and never look back. By the time you find civilization and get them to come back, we will be gone. You'll be deemed crazy, and I will be sure to find you again. Or you can bring me a replacement and help beat us until we are strong enough to take over, and you will be spared. The choice is yours.
I stood there thinking for a second before, almost out of instinct, raising the gun and shooting the beam multiple times. Screeches and rumbles could be heard all around. The bulbous in the center of the room shook as the creatures from earlier were coming back.
Wrong choice,
the beam said before it fell limp. I looked around eagerly to try and devise a plan, but nothing was coming up.
Burn them,
I heard Greg say in the back of my mind. I looked to Chris's service belt to see his flare gun. I grabbed that and pointed it at the mass on the ceiling, firing the one shot it had into it. A deafening scream rang out, causing me to drop to the floor, holding my hands over my ears until passing out. I woke in a hospital bed covered in bandages and loud ringing in my ear.
Nurse, he's awake.
I heard a familiar voice say. Looking up, I saw the same malnourished Chris I saw in the basement looking at me.
Where am I?
I asked, staying up slowly.
Careful, man. Don't get up too fast. You've been out for a while.
I thought you were...
Dead? Nah. I awoke to that screeching and dragged your ass out before the whole building collapsed. What was that in there?
It said that it was feeding on us and that... Are there any more survivors?
Just us. Believe, I tried. But the building was so old that the flare you shot caused the place to light up like gas on a fire. I barely had time to pull that tube out and carry you out before it collapsed.
What about that man in there? The mummy-looking guy. Did you see him leave?
What mummy-looking guy?
Never mind. He must have stayed there.
You okay, man?
I don't know. I'm just glad to be out.
Yeah, same here.
When the Coast Guard's cutter finally located the missing MV Deep Harvest, they found no crew members on her upper decks, and the words, "Don't eat it," scrawled on several bulkheads. They found the mangled remains of the crew in the cargo hold, surrounding a huge banquet of untouched luxury foods, which all the seamen agreed was starting to look very tasty. Hey guys, before I start this story, I'd like to warn you this is actually a part 3. This writer was cheeky and wrote 2 other parts, one that's the direct prequel to this, and one that is a little side bit of it. I will have them linked down below and in the eye icon for you guys. Now, onto the story. I search for things people are too scared to believe in. Part 2. By Coal Blaze K. I'm so sorry it's taken so long to get back to everyone. Things have been a little busy lately, and reliving what I went through didn't really help. I just need another break and time to myself to sort things out and get in the right headspace. I'm okay though, and I'm no longer being controlled or manipulated by the entity. Thankfully, I got away with a little help from John Doe back at the bar. I remember going through hell 1,000 times over, feeling my skin bubble, boil, and pop from heat. Fingers breaking and teeth shattering from biting so hard, causing of the pain. I still get nightmares and glimpses of it from time to time. I collapse from the headaches. I get remembering everything, but I've tried my best to cope. So here's how I got out. John Doe came in after I was there for a couple days. He said he had a bad feeling that I actually went there to investigate. When he found me, he said I was curled up covered in blood and my eyes were rolled back. The weird thing was that I wasn't in a cellar, or any hole for that matter. Where I was, though, was right in the entranceway, just lying there as if I had never fallen through any hole at all. So he dragged me to his truck and brought me to the hospital. He told me as we were arriving, I began walking up and becoming conscious again. For me, that's when I started to get back to the real world, to this reality. I tried getting off the cart, but the nurse wouldn't let me leave and I ended up getting restrained. So, because of that, I spent a couple weeks in the hospital. Got questioned a bit, but I was still in daze and don't remember much of those conversations. 23 stitches and a couple of unknown fingernails were pulled out of me. That's what they looked like at least. So because of that, police questioned me and kept an eye on me the whole time I was there. A good visit to the psych ward and a visit to the psychologist was how I spent the remainder of my time there. Too bad it wasn't the psychologist I knew. Speaking of him, I haven't heard from him in a while. He did email me, however, but I was unable to open it because the computer time was over. Finally, after being released, I got a ride back to my vehicle and paid John Doe for his troubles. On the way to get my vehicle, he tried to talk to me about what I went through, what I had experienced. But I wasn't ready to talk about it yet. I gave him my information and told him we'd be in contact. Anytime I meet someone on one of my cases that turns out to be real, they want to learn more. So, they go out searching themselves. Some make it back, some on the other hand don't. That's why I usually recommend the only psychologist I know to talk them out of it. He sort of knows what I do, but also doesn't believe and thinks I'm crazy. I don't blame him. I mean, the guy talks to crazy people for a living. Once I get my stuff back and settle somewhere, I'm going to try and get in contact with him. Audio transcript case log 11. Name, Greg Furlock. Location, Indiana. December 2011.
So, you think I'm crazy?
No, I believe that you are, as you put it, search for things to deal with the trauma of losing your parents.
I'm not making that up. Police came and found me. There was a whole case. You can look it up.
I've read the reports and I've heard your story. I've also gone over these so-called cases you've investigated, and they all seem fabricated, as though they were made up in your mind to create some sort of closure.
So, the news clippings, the audio recordings, everything is just fake? I paid people to speak and create fake newspaper articles?
Let's get back to the matter at hand. You're here because you believe you're looking for a certain creature, am I wrong?
I am looking for something, yes, but I have no idea what it is yet.
This could all just be in your head. How about this? You go on some antipsychotics and check in a few weeks and see how you feel. In the meantime, enjoy the scenery in the town. We'll be in touch.
Audio transcript case log 11 over. That was one of the last times I had been in contact with my psychologist. Actual face-to-face contact. We had talked over email a few times here and there. Just to discuss my mental health and what happened in the small town of Indiana. That was one of the toughest cases I had to investigate. But that's for another time. You may be asking why I brought up my psychologist so easily and quickly. Some are probably also thinking, well, this guy's insane. He has a psychologist. Nothing he says could be true. I promise you, it is. When I say I search for things, I do. Whether the case turns up to be true or not is a whole other story. For instance, when I said I was searching for a Wendigo, I was. Do I typically believe in everything I'm told? Not all the time. But it doesn't hurt to just check it out. But to get back on track, here's why I brought up my doctor. He emailed me a month or so ago asking for help in a case he had been assigned. Apparently a bunch of people have been going missing from a town and he wanted my expertise on what it could be. Crazy, right? A person with a doctorate asking their patients for help with something. He seemed worried though in the email. He said he thinks something might be coming after him. I tried emailing him back a few times, but there hasn't been a response. I'm only a few states away, so I guess it doesn't hurt to check it out. So I packed up what little things I had, checked out the hospital, and headed to wherever my GPS was taking me. Along the drive, I kept getting flashes of the entity I'd run into. I'd see him on the road, or I'd see a light flashing like it wanted me to go that way. I just ignored it and kept driving. Although sleeping when needed didn't really excite me. I'd been plagued with nightmares and sleep paralysis since the incident. So, I usually try to stay awake for as long as I can. Tonight, though, I couldn't do that. As I laid in my back seat ready to take on the dreams, my mind had a different plan. For once, there was nothing. Not a single thing in my dream. Just black, like when you close your eyes in a dark room. That's all I saw. hearing noises here and there occasionally, but nothing terrifying happened. I awoke to a beautiful sunrise, went into a rest stop to get a coffee, and headed on my way. I felt refreshed, and probably the most well-rested in a long time. Then, as soon as I got onto the interstate, a massive wave of pure darkness surrounded me. While trying to move, I heard something speak to me.
You can't hide forever. I will find you again.
Before I became face to face with sunken-in dark eyes and an eerie white smile. Then I woke to the sun just about to come over the horizon and a pit in my stomach. Crawling up front, I grabbed a cigarette and went to get some coffee. Getting back on the road and to my destination was a little difficult. What if I was doing what the entity wanted? What if this was another ploy? But I had to shove those thoughts down with another cigarette and kept on driving. It was about 20 more hours I finally reached the town. Driving through the main road, I realized it was kind of nice, quiet place. There was a beautiful forest on one side of the town and a nice number of stores around the place. After admiring the place for a while, I decided to get a motel room and start my investigation. After getting everything set up and my items in order, I set out for the main road to look around and see if there was anything suspicious. As I was heading down the main steps, I saw an outline of someone standing behind a lady at the counter. Knowing who and what it was, I wanted to ignore it, but I needed all the help I could get to find my friend. When I reached the counter, the lady looked up in a happy manner and said,
Everything in your room okay?
Yes, it's perfect. Thank you. I just had a couple of questions on whether or not you've seen someone. I'm looking for an old friend.
Well, who might you be looking for, sweetie?
His name is Greg, and he's a psychiatrist. He came here to help with some things going on around town. Have you seen him?
I replied while handing her a picture of my doctor.
He doesn't look all too familiar. The only psychiatrist I know we have in town is Mark. He lives about 3 blocks down from Maine, and is in the only brick house on the block.
Thank you. I really appreciate the help and the room.
Have a good one,
she finally said as I began walking in the direction of the man's house. While walking down Main, I felt a little off, as though I wasn't supposed to be here. An overwhelming sense of dread loomed over me as I laid my eyes on a wall. On the wall was about 12 missing person flyers. Examining them, I was able to make out that the first one disappeared about a month ago, and the latest one was about a week ago. There didn't seem to be any correlation between any of them, no pattern to follow or other clues to help. The first was a little kid and the last was adult male. Everyone in between was of different ages, races, and genders. My initial instinct said it could be a cult or a serial killer, but they don't strike this fast in such a small amount of time. I pulled out my camera, took a picture of the wall, then started my way to this Marks again. The lady at the desk wasn't wrong. She explained it perfectly. 3 blocks down and the only brick house on the block. Well, brick foundation and a white house, but it was the only house on the block with brick. Making my way up the driveway, I began thinking of what to say and asked this man. Did he know Greg? Has he seen or met him? All thoughts cut short as a man exited the front door and made eye contact.
May I help you?
He asked while straightening his tie.
Yes, if you could talk for a few.
I replied, gesturing to sit in some chairs on his porch. The man gave a quizzical look as if he was trying to debate whether or not to speak to me. He looked down at his watch, then back up at me and spoke.
I guess I have a few minutes to spare.
While sitting down, I asked,
Mind if I record?
He nodded in agreement, and we began. Audio transcript case log 27. Name, Mark. Location, small town, Missouri.
So, what's been the deal with all these missing persons around here?
What are you, an FBI agent or something?
Or something. I am an investigator of sorts. I just don't work for any agency. I go around to places with strange occurrences.
It sounds like you have dissociation disorder. Do you have a hard time telling whether you're dreaming or in reality sometimes?
I don't have a dissociation disorder. I am perfectly healthy and fine. I am also not looking for a new psychiatrist. Mine actually came to this place to try to figure out why so many people have gone missing. I was wondering if you, by any chance, have seen him.
Sliding a photograph of Greg to him, Mark picked it up and examined it for a minute, before setting it down and replying.
Interesting, but I haven't seen him. Why would he come here to look for missing people? And if he's your psychiatrist, why is he buying into your delusions?
They're not delusions, and because I helped him one time see the bigger picture and things. How about we talk about the missing people? No bodies or anything have been found.
Not one. To be honest, I was thinking about trying to find them myself. Some folks think it's an urban legend. Others think cult.
Well, what do you think? And tell me about this urban legend.
Well, I don't know what to think. I find it odd how people just up and vanish without a trace. It's not normal. No one just leaves without a trace. When most flee, there's always at least a little part that shows that. But with these, they're just gone. Poof.
And what about the urban legend?
Back on the non-reality train, I see. Okay, so the urban legend has many variations. One is a monster that snatched people and takes them into the woods. Another is a gate to hell that people seem fascinated into going down. And the last is about a creature that lures you into the woods and holds you captive, before finally letting out one massive screech for all to know that the person's soul is gone. But they're all just old tales parents used to tell their kids to scare them.
Well, you seem a little shaken up.
How so?
It was at this point I began to notice Mark's mannerism change. His voice got a little scratchy and his hands shook a little. He was completely fine until he began telling me of the last legend.
Well, considering you're fine telling the first two, I'd say you don't believe them, but that last one, your voice changed and your hand shook, so that either tells me you got cold or you just came to the realization of what might be out there.
There's nothing out there. At least, that's what I used to think.
You saw something, didn't you?
I didn't see anything. I heard something. A screech. I thought it was in my head, but you coming to me with all this makes me rethink what I heard. I have to go, though.
Well, here's my number, if you think of anything else.
Auto transcript case log 27 over. With that, Mark made his way down his path and got into his car. He seemed visibly shaken and pale as he walked off. There's always a problem with sharing what I do with people. They either think I'm crazy, or have some little unknown thing happen to them they shrug off. But once they get done talking to me, that curtain to another reality opens up just a little bit. I'm going to have to come back sometime soon to check up on them and ask a couple more things. Time to find something to eat, though. I haven't had a bite since the truck stop. Maybe someone at the diner will know something. As I entered the diner, I noticed that everyone stopped to take a look at me. Small towns always notice when there's a new person around. Feeling everyone's gaze as I sat down was uncomfortable, but soon everyone returned to their own table. I pulled out my journal and began to take notes of things Mark had said in our interview. I transcribe it to a digital form when I get back to my room, but for now it was noting and cross-referencing the urban legends he told me to see if it matched anything I had knowledge on. Sadly, nothing I run into matched. My best guess was Banshee because of the screeching, but they don't lure you away. They only wail when death is coming. So, unless it's working with something else, that's off the table. As the waitress came to give me my bill, I asked if she had heard or seen anything weirdly lately. She chuckled a little before finally saying,
"That I have not. There was no screeching, no creature running amok or anything. I don't know if Greg sent you to see if I'd say something different, but there's nothing to say. Everything's been normal besides the missing people. But the town's got its best and brightest on the case."
Wait, you know Greg? Where is he?
I replied a little too aggressively and fast.
No. I don't personally know him. He just strolled into town a little while ago, asking all these questions about the missing people. I told him the same thing I told you. He heard about the screeching from Mark, but being a psychiatrist has to mess with your head after some time.
When was the last time you saw him?
Mark was in yesterday, and I haven't seen Greg for about a week or so. I figured he left because there was nothing to find. Need anything else?
I'm good for now, thank you.
I replied, handing her a 20.
Keep the change.
While packing up, I noticed a man alone in a corner booth staring daggers at me. Trying to ignore it, I put on my jacket and headed to the exit. Just as I reached for the door, the man grabbed my arm and whispered something to me, before abruptly opening the door and pushing me out. A little confused, I began to walk down the street, his voice echoing in my mind.
"Leave. You're drawing too much attention. They'll take you."
What did he mean by that?
"They'll take you, too."
Is it a cult that I'm dealing with? If so, this is not something I want to get into the middle of. I've run into my fair share of cults and never really turned out that well. Most are either dead, imprisoned, or just plainly disappeared. As I got back to my room for the day, I noticed a note on my door. Consciously looking around, I pulled it off and then began to read it.
"If you're seeing this, that means I am gone. You're in over your head. Get out of town."
The letter wasn't signed by anyone, but I took the warning into consideration. I'll spend one more day here, and if nothing shows up, I'll leave town. Another night plagued with nightmares and little to no sleep. This time it felt different, though. It felt as though the entity was warning me, telling me as well to leave. That scared me even more, that this being that had been plaguing me wanted me to go too. But it also makes me wonder that if listening to its warning brings me closer to meaning it. It also kept trying to get me angry enough to come in contact with it. I'm smarter than it, though. I learned from a man on one of my dream walking cases that sometimes you can materialize a being in your dream if you touch it, meaning it'll come into our universe. There's different theories on dreams and the power of them. Some say it's a different universe, others a hellscape, and finally an alternate reality. So if you ever dream and it seems like something really wants you to touch or grab it, don't. Because you could be bringing whatever it is into your world to wreak havoc. And it'll be all your fault. Getting past that, I've decided to talk to Mark again today. He seemed uneasy and in a hurry the last time we met. It's Saturday now, so he should hopefully be home and not working. Well, Mark isn't home. His house was unlocked and no one was inside. I hope he didn't go missing as well. I really need to figure this out before more people go missing. As I was leaving his house, I heard it. This weird, screeching noise that left as fast as it came. After I heard that, I knew he was gone. My only lead just up and disappeared or was taken. It's been 3 days since Mark has been missing, and I have no leads or any ideas of where to go. I began walking the edge of town until I saw it. There that thing was again. That entity, except this time, it was just staring at me, motionless. Then lifted up in a pure black arm and pointed in the direction of where I needed to go. Standing there frozen, thousands of thoughts running through my mind until it clicked. When we first met, I was in his domain. Now, he's in mine. But why is he helping me? I looked in the direction of his oily black finger, and it was pointing into the woods. When I looked back, he was gone.
Fuck,
I said to myself, frozen, trying to gather up what I saw. That was the first time I'd seen it in person since the incident. I had to push down the feelings of dread and go back to my room to gather some supplies. Well, sorry for not finishing this case and sharing it for a while. It's been an interesting situation. Things went not as planned, but let me break down what happened. So once I got back in my room, I grabbed my flashlight, gun, water, and a few other things. I began my journey into the woods. It was a pretty beautiful and pleasant walk aside from going into unknown towards the unknown. There was about an hour left of sunlight when I came across it, an old, disheveled building in the middle of the woods. The access road had been covered in overgrown and fallen trees, so I'm guessing that's why no one came here. It looked like an old rusted Quonset, holes all over and windows broken, almost ready to fall over. Shining my flashlight inside, I noticed it was trashed, empty boxes and garbage strewed about. Some old furniture and a refrigerator tipped, definitely abandoned for years. Checking the door, it was unlocked and opened with a loud creak. Mice scuttled across my feet as I entered into the darkness, testing a light switch to my right to see if any worked. Thankfully, one of the 4 worked and turned on a light in the back of the Quonset.
That's not creepy,
I thought as I made my way to the back in the maze of garbage and furniture. When I reached the back, I heard some scuttling from behind and turned to see garbage being moved and then ceasing.
Must be rats,
I said to myself as I turned back around to look at the cellar door on the ground. Hesitating as I began to reach down and open it up, I grabbed the cold steel handle and threw open the door, only to see a nice wooden staircase heading underground. I began my decline into the void, flashlight showing the way. It was about 15 steps until I hit the flat floor to the side of another door, an old wooden door. Cracks and paint chips off with a rusty crystal handle. As I entered the main room and looked around, I noticed a man lying on the floor, although he wasn't the only one. Multiple people all sitting or standing in what looked like a paralytic state. Focused back to the man, he was unlike the rest of them. He looked to have maybe been the newest one there. He was the cleanest out of them all. He was dressed in a nice suit, had on glasses, and was beginning to grow some scruff. The more interesting thing was the white tube pulsating in his mouth. Everyone in the room had one that seemed to be down their throats. The difference between the one on the floor and the rest was that one seemed to be bruised and bleeding, Kneeling down to check for a pulse, I also noticed blood and bile in the front of the man's mouth. It was fresh. Then it hit me who it was. Mark. As I reached for the tube and got my first hand around it before stopping once I heard screeching, it seemed as though the sound was coming from inside of him. I continued to pull it out as Mark was twitching and withering as the tube finally left his body. When it was out, the thing seemed to lunge back at him, then focus its attention on me. It looked like a close-up picture of a tapeworm's mouth, but this had tiny little eyes. It began squealing and lunging at me until it finally ceased. Then I heard it. Something speaking. I quickly turned on my recorder and listened in again to see if it would speak again. As I stood, I noticed something sitting in a throne at the end of the room. Audio transcript case log 27. Name unknown. Location woods outside of town.
Let my child go.
This worm thing is your child?
Everything in here has become my child, and you have interrupted my peace.
What are you doing to all these people?
I do not have to answer questions to some pathetic mortal like you.
You're not the first so-called powerful being I met. You do not scare me.
Ah, yes. I can sense the fear, darkness, and dread in you. It would taste so delectable right now, but this fear isn't from me.
Exactly. I don't fear you.
You will learn to.
With that, an aura appeared behind the unknown being, and I could see all of its features. It looked like a swirling mass of leathery vines covering its body. They seemed to be constantly moving or pulsating as it spoke.
You will very much learn to feel me and fear what I can do.
Curiously and surprisingly, I took a few steps closer. As I was able to focus on it more, I got a better look at it. The thing didn't have one face, but multiple moving about. There was one where the head was, another showing on his shoulder as those veins opened up to make way, followed by another appearing on his chest and then stomach. The thing was hideous, and each face misshapen and stuck in a grotesque manner, sending shivers down my spine as I stood paralyzed. Fuck, this thing is actually terrifying.
Now I can almost taste your fear of me. But it's still not as strong as everyone else's. Curious, what has you so afraid that even my true nature doesn't kill you?
Flashes of the entity went through my mind as I finally spoke.
I'm just looking for my friend. I'll take him and leave. Then you can continue whatever this is.
I can't let you do that. We need him and all the others in order to feed us. We have been through thousands of civilizations and planets. We will not stop now. Nothing will stop us.
It's one person. 2 people gone. You have at least 20 down here.
We are many. We need all the food we can get. Soon, you, along with this world, will be a part of us.
Fine. Be that way.
In a quite stupid decision, I grabbed the pulsating tube on the ground and put it in my mouth and swallowed it. I could hear myself gagging and withering in pain on the audio recording as the thing went further down my throat. Then, all black. Audio transcript case log 27 end.
You are not
not supposed to be here.
I heard a familiar voice say somewhere in the darkness.
Why not? Is this all it is? Just a black pool of nothingness?
I replied as I slowly drifted around in what seemed to be an endless void. It was as though I was in space, but every star had gone out.
I have put you through a construct like this before. Although, this abomination's is nowhere near the perfectness of mine. There's holes and glitches all over. Pathetic.
Then it hit me, the entity. I was inside his own creation, almost like a barrier between the creature's world and the entities. Was it protecting me?
Where am I?
You already know. You are inside a construct of my own making. Don't want to damage your precious goods.
What's it supposed to mean?
I have found your friend. I'll bring you to him. But remember, you owe me.
With that, I saw a bright light open in the darkness. Once I was able to focus, I could see that I was on a sidewalk in front of a hospital. Next thing I know, I'm standing on the sidewalk, as though the void I was in never existed. It felt so real, but something was off. In the distance, the same pattern of birds kept flying by, and the world seemed too quiet. The entity was right. This was nothing like his. The only reason I could tell something was off in the entities was because he showed himself to me. Shaking off the uneasy feeling, I head inside the hospital. As I reached the front desk, a lady spoke.
Good evening. How may I help you?
It felt like spikes going down my back as she said those last words. It was not human. It was like something was still learning to mimic.
I'm just here to visit.
I replied as I made my way to the elevator.
Who are you visiting?
She asked as I kept walking, ignoring her. Once the elevator doors closed, I was able to loosen up a bit and get a grip. Looking at the buttons, I noticed the one for the 3rd floor was all black, and the rest weren't.
That must be it.
I said to myself, pressing the button. As the elevator began to move slowly upwards, it felt as though an earthquake was beginning to happen. Shaking and rumbling getting worse and worse until it made me collapse and the elevator stopped moving. As I looked up, I saw the unknown creature in the metal doors reflecting, then disappeared. It was not happy with whatever I was doing. Standing up, I pressed the button again, but nothing was happening. The elevator was shut down and unable to move. I was in there for what felt like hours, then days, trying to get that god-forsaken door open. Trapped and starving, fingertips bleeding from attempts to pry open the door. Disheveled, starving, and beaten, I cursed at the door as I was sitting in front of it. Until finally, what felt like a week had passed. A thin, pure black line made its way down the slit between the door, making it open just a bit. I quickly shot up, digging my fingers between the doors and prying them open with all my might. It was stuck between floors, about 1 foot of a gap into the 3rd floor, a gap I could climb through, or die by, if the elevator fell. As I reached for the ledge and began to pull myself up, I somehow ended up in the middle of the hall standing. Looking around confused, the elevator door closed with a ding and left the floor.
Huh? Some things definitely could be worked on here.
I said aloud as I walked through the corridor scanning rooms. Not really knowing what I was looking for, I heard a familiar voice in a room say,
How did we get here?
Stopping in my tracks, continuing to listen to their conversation, I was finally able to tell who it was. It was Mark. Making my way through the doorway, I noticed him and a cop talking. The cop glared at me as he shoved his way past me and left.
What are you doing here?
Mark asked while adjusting his bed.
Looking for my friend and also you.
Well, you found me. You figure out what happened?
You don't know, do you?
Know what?
That none of this is real.
He sat there for a moment, puzzled and staring into space. It was as though some mental battle was happening before he finally spoke up.
No, it can't be. I got out. I escaped.
I'm sorry, but you didn't. It looked like you did for a moment. Sadly, it wasn't long enough.
Then that means you're fake, you sick fuck. Why are you doing this?
Calm down. I put myself here to find you and Greg. Not the brightest idea, but we're gonna get out.
There's no way to get out. I tried. Nothing worked. By the way, your buddy Greg is a dick.
Yeah, he can be sometimes. Come on, we gotta find.
As I turned to leave, I saw him in the doorway. He was covered in some mysterious liquid and panting before saying,
We really need to go. What's the escape plan?
As I was about to say something, I heard the entity's voice.
I did my part. Now do yours.
With that, we got surrounded in darkness before everything went out. I awoke on the floor gagging as I could feel the tube pulsing and moving down my throat. I gripped it as hard as I could and began pulling it out, hearing it screech and feeling it fight before finally letting loose and coming out. Once it was out, I puked, and then I began to smash the thing against the floor until it stopped moving. As I was on my knees, coughing and catching my breath, I looked over to see one of the tubes had gotten back into Mark. That's how he was back in there. He was jolted awake, ripping the thing from within him, and began puking. As I was staying up, I saw Greg on the other side of the room from me wiping his mouth. Audio transcript case log 27. Name, unknown. Location, woods outside town.
You and Mark, get out of here. I'll be right behind you.
But...
Go now!
Them scuttling away can be heard before a voice emerges in the silence.
You stupid, insipid fool! You are poisoned with the void. Now you've poisoned me and my others. You will pay for what you've done.
The void?
You have no idea what it is that you are playing with. No mortal would be able to function, much less survive with that disease. Doesn't matter. You won't be alive for long.
Audio transcript case log 27 end. With that, multiple of the weird, fleshy tubes slithered towards me and wrapped themselves around my legs and up my torso, fighting and screaming at the pain as these creatures bit all over my body, taking out bits of flesh. I saw it. The entity standing above me. It leaned in close and spoke.
This is where you owe me. This abomination doesn't deserve life. It is a mockery of what pure darkness can do.
The entity reached its hand out to me as though he wanted me to shake it. Every fiber in my body was telling me no, but there was nothing else that I could do. The pain was unbearable. The creatures were biting and tearing away pieces of flesh. I wiggled my arm free and grabbed him by the wrist, finally enacting a deal I would regret. Then he was gone. The creature had stopped and withered away, slowly slithering back until they stopped. As I began to regain myself, I looked up to see the entity behind the unknown abomination. It was shaking and withering in its throne, seeming as though it was the most immense pain of its life. Finally, the entity lifted its hand up and grabbed at both sides of the thing's head.
You are an abomination.
He spoke before twisting the abomination's head and ripping it off at the same time. The entity then looked at me, dropping the head and saying,
You and I have a lot of work to do. Come, let's get started.
Thought I'd grab a quick 5-minute shower while the wife ran to grab dinner and left our toddler at home, crying he wanted to go with her. I didn't realize how badly he wanted to go until I got out of the shower to a silent home with the front door left wide open. I search for things people are too scared to believe in. Part 3, 1 of 2. By Cole Blaze K.
You and I have a lot of work to do.
Echoed through my mind as I sat inside my new home, cigarette in one hand, coffee in the other, just trying to get some semblance of normalcy, even if it was just for a day. After everything I witnessed and went through again, I needed a change. I sold my truck along with some other items and bought a decently sized van. I've been remodeling it for the last few months to make it more viable and a cheaper home, especially if I wanted to continue my work. Speaking of work, I know I've been on a little bit of a hiatus, and I'm sorry for that. I am alive though, so you can stop worrying. Ever since what went down in the town with Greg and Mark, I still trying to wrap my head around it. The entity came into our world, fully came in, and I was the one that helped. But that's not what bothers me the most. After he killed that creature, he reattached its head and put what looked like a seed in the mouth. It then looked at me and just vanished. What was the point of saying we have work to do if it was just going to leave? Ever since he crossed the threshold, my night terrors have pretty much ceased. Very rarely do I have one, and if I do, it's manageable. After shaking hands with it, I got a burn on my wrist in the shape of a hand. In my dreams, it was all black and the entity came crawling out of it. But that's enough of that. Things are better, and I want to share some things with you. I've been asked a couple times to do so, and I thought now would be the best time to talk about the previous cases. I'm on break in a national park that is just beautiful and have ample time to sort through files. Moving kind of makes you go through your old things or find forgotten things. So when I started rereading old cases, I thought I should share them with you. A few are unsolved and some are still pending, but I thought talking about them would maybe shed some light, hopefully moving towards solving one of them. The first case I have for you is the Red Door. Case log 04. Location, Kansas, Wichita. As I finished up an old case, I made my way through Wichita to see a couple of things there. I'm a sucker for sightseeing. After my first day there, I was walking out of a coffee shop and I saw a frantic man handing out flyers. He handed one to me and I kept walking, thinking nothing of it. Finally, after coming to a crosswalk and having to wait, I examined it. There was a picture of a woman and a red door behind her. On the top of the page read, "Have you seen this woman?" And at the bottom it read, "Have you seen this door in your dreams? If so, call." Curiosity took over, and I caught myself walking back towards the man. He seemed tired and disheveled, like he hadn't slept or cleaned himself for days. His clothes were wrinkly and his hair was greasy. Noticing another passerby, he reached his flyers out to them, and they just swerved out of the way. Everyone acted as though he wasn't there. He cried and fell to his knees, then began talking to himself. No wonder no one took him seriously. I was probably the first to take the flyer. I approached the man and squatted down beside him.
Here to call me crazy and shove me down some more?
He said, wiping away tears.
No. I'm here to ask you about your flyer.
I replied, reaching out a hand to help pick him up. We sat down at a table and talked for over an hour about what occurred. Apparently, he dreamwalked with his girlfriend to see this supposed red door. He said he was seeing it almost every night. The first couple of attempts didn't work, but the fourth one did. When they finally saw it, she decided to go into it. Before he was able to follow, the door slammed and he woke up in a pile of sweat. His girlfriend was nowhere to be seen. It was as though she vanished without a trace. He's been looking for her ever since, trying to see the door again, but it's been to no avail. Then nightmares began and he stopped sleeping. He wanted to dreamwalk with me, but I wasn't able to help. Dreamwalking is a dangerous thing, and I've been told too many times about the power of dreams. I gave him the information for Josh, a specialist I know, and went on my way. A couple of weeks later, Josh called to talk to me about the case. He said he and the man began their dreamwalking session and came across the door. Josh knew what it was instantly. The man had lied and said he needed to find his inner spirit in order to trick Josh into doing it. The red door has been a dream phenomenon for a while, and it's always been said to avoid it. Josh tried to stop the man, but he burst through the door and was gone. When Josh awoke, the man was gone and he hadn't been seen or heard from since. Case log 04, The Red Door, unsolved. The next case was one that I received a lot of questions about, the Wendigo, or at least that's what I think it was. Case log 07, Clean Bones, location Black Hills, South Dakota. I had no intentions of stopping in Spearfish, South Dakota, but when you need gas, you need gas. While filling my tank, I noticed a flyer up on a pole by the pump. Inspecting it, I noticed it was for a girl who had gone missing while camping. Underneath hers was another one for a guy who had gone missing in the same conditions. I put 2 and 2 together and figured they must have been camping together. I took one of the number slips and gave it a call, setting up a time to speak with the parents. Audio transcript, case log 07, location South Dakota.
You don't mind that I record?
No, not at all. As long as it helps find our daughter and her friend.
So, what is it that you can tell me about the location they went to?
As far as I know and what she told me, they were going to Iron Creek Trail. It's a few miles past Bridalveil Falls. You should see the bridge and a pull-off section. That's one of the trails she frequented most. It is unmarked though, but she usually camped out just a few miles in. I'm scared though, because this isn't the first person to go missing around here. There have been 3 others. They had just found the shin bone of the first person missing a few days ago, saying it was a wild animal or something. The thing is, the bone was completely clean, as though something was nibbling on it for days.
Just the bone? And you said it was completely clean?
Clean except for a little chunk of flesh and a groove, just enough to identify the person.
Man was a convict, so he won't be missed.
Joseph, that is a terrible thing to say. A life is a life no matter the sin. Sorry for his intrusion, but some people are saying it might be something supernatural, like a...
Oh, don't go spouting off that horse shit. There's nothing supernatural about it. I think the man's got enough information now. Go find our daughter and don't come back until you do.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate your info.
and I'll be in touch.
Audio transcript case log 07 end. 5 people missing from the area all around Black Hills is going to be hard to pinpoint. At least I have some okay amount of information to go off of to find the 4th and 5th missing. First missing, deceased most likely with the whole leg bone showing up. That or some forged records happened. I went around the surrounding towns first to find info on the 2nd and 3rd missing. Couldn't find anything on the 2nd, but the 3rd was interesting. The sister of the 2nd didn't want to be interviewed. She just told me her brother went missing around Barnes Canyon. On my 2nd day investigating, the 3rd missing person was found in the middle of Cold Brook Canyon. At least, the rest of him was. Spanning in a 1/4-mile radius with multiple bones picked clean in his head right on the trail, as if someone wanted it to be found. I tried interviewing one of the rangers who were on the scene. They declined and told me to leave it to them. Of course, I'm not going to. But some more information would help. This leads me to the biggest worry I have. Either the 2nd body has yet to be found, or has already been consumed, or is next dinner before the daughter and her friend. So, no more talking to people. Time to get my hiking boots on and have a little walk. While searching around the trail, a sudden fear came over me. The fear of walking into the unknown and having no idea what you're getting yourself into. Surprising, right? Coming from a person who just started looking into the unknown. But this is a feeling that I have gotten used to. About 3/4 of a mile in, I thought I saw someone standing behind a tree way off in the distance. The thing was, they didn't have any distinguishing features. They looked like they were in a black morph suit, but it was getting dark and there was quite a bit of trees. So, against my better judgment, I began to make my way to them. A couple steps in, I noticed a jacket on the ground. It was a little beat up and had some blood on it. Kneeling down to inspect it some more, I heard a voice calling out. Turning around, I noticed it was one of the rangers I tried to talk to at the last crime scene. Audio transcript case log 07. Location, Iron Creek Trail.
What are you doing out here?
Oh, just going for a little hike.
Really? You just happened to be going for a little hike where 2 people went missing. One of them whose parents you've talked to. I told you to stop investigating and leave it to us. But you gave me a feeling that you weren't going to listen. So I followed you, and, well, looks like I was right.
Silence goes over the recording as we both are standing there. Tension in the air rose, and then died as soon as I slightly moved my arm and pointed to the jacket.
What's that?
The girl's jacket. Looks like your department did need my help.
Whatever you say. We would have found it once we set the dogs loose.
And when was that supposed to...
I cut myself off as I noticed a broken, bloody branch about 4 feet away. The crunching of the leaves came through until I stopped and knelt down.
They went this way.
How do you know?
I used to do quite a bit of tracking when I hunted. Then it got a little better once I began looking into these things that I was investigating. You'd be surprised how many people go missing. And what's really out there.
You really believe in that nonsense? Cryptids, aliens, Nessie, and Bigfoot?
Some of it, yes. Sometimes it's nothing but a psychopath or a cult. But other times there's no other explanation.
Help! Someone, please! Help!
The voice sounded different. It was too off. It was even more apparent in the recording.
It came from this way. Move, now!
Wait! Stop! Hold on just a second.
I grabbed his arm to make him stop.
Help! Someone, please! Help!
What the fuck are you doing? They need our help.
That sounded the exact same as the first time. Can't you tell? It sounds off too. Just listen.
Silence filled the recording for about 30 seconds until it was broken.
Help! Someone, please! Help!
See, it sounds exactly the same. It's also coming from the south. The tracks are heading east. Something doesn't want us going this way.
I don't believe you. You're crazy. Someone is out there and needs our help.
Okay, listen. If they are that way, the tracks will begin to head that way. So, let's just keep following them until we come across something, okay?
Fuck. Fine. You better know what you're doing, Cryptid Hunter.
Audio transcript case log 07, end. I noted down that nickname in case I ever wanted to make business cards. Also, to have something to look forward to if I survive the upcoming interaction. After about 15 more minutes of walking, we stumbled upon an alcove. Towards the end, an entrance to a cave could be barely seen. It was just about nightfall now, and the forest was getting a lot darker. Mark and I both looked at each other, saying, "You go first," with our eyes. Finally, getting enough courage, I pulled a flare out of my bag and struck it. A bright incandescent red fled over and illuminated the area around us before dying down a bit.
You do know I have a flashlight, right?
Mark said with a snarky tone.
I know, but this fills the whole area, not just a small beam. Also, red is a lot less hard on the eyes than white light.
I replied, entering the mouth of the cave.
Fair point.
He replied, following behind. Walking through the cave felt as though we were walking through a portal to hell. The deep red light mixed with the small reflections of the cave wall felt almost otherworldly, as if we were traveling a place we weren't supposed to be. After a few more minutes, the smell of rot hit my nose like a freight train, almost making me gag.
What the fuck is that?
Mark said while gagging into his hand.
I don't know, but it means we're getting closer.
I replied, dropping the flare and striking a new one.
I don't think we should be here. This feels like an animal den. What if it comes back?
Mark and I both stopped and stared in silence. On the ground, a few feet in front of us, was a pile of dead bodies. Deer, coyotes, rabbits, and a mountain lion were all laying there slowly decaying.
Safe to say it's not coming back, but I'm more worried about whatever did this.
I said, slowly walking around the pile. Mark just gagged and stayed silent until we hit a partially lit opening. The opening was massive and a few dimly lit candles were strewed around. It was a much larger area than I had thought. We were only able to see a few feet in and a couple of other spots as the flare was dying down and the candles were afar. Dropping the flare and getting ready to strike a new one, Mark stomped it out and pushed me into the crack in the wall. Unable to say anything because of his hand over my mouth, he quietly said,
"Shut the fuck up. I heard something."
With that, the noise of a claw scraping on the rocks passed by. Standing there in the dark, not knowing what to do, I heard a girl crying in the opening. It was unintelligible, just a lot of sobbing and half-words. The sounds of something heavily breathing was coming through the opening now. Then came the sounds of what I could only guess were tendons and muscles being ripped. After that was done, we could hear what sounded like someone eating a pie with no hands and an open mouth. Except that this was no normal pie. It was guttural sitting there listening to the chomping and chewing. Then a final snap and a sucking sound ended the symphony of grotesque noises. The girl was crying louder now, asking and begging.
Why? Oh no! Why?
Through sobs, suddenly there was a scream followed by cracks and groans, and then a man spoke. Audio transcript case log 07. Location, cave system. Cracks and groans with sobs in the background.
Why are you doing this?
Why? Simple. Hunger. Sleeping. Long sleep. Need food.
Where's John? What did you do to my boyfriend?
A dragging noise followed by a loud, wet thump. Then the girl began screaming.
That's it. I can't wait anymore. Hey! Over here, motherfucker!
No, stop! God damn it!
Audio transcript case log 07. End. The man, creature, turned around to see Mark and I at the entrance of the opening. He was barely visible, but you can tell it was scantily clothed and covered in blood. Striking a flare, the area lit up and the thing could be fully seen. Its face was bloody and its jaw was slacked open with a piece of meat hanging out. The thing hissed at the flame and crouched down, almost in a lunging position. Mark began to move to the right and I followed suit. Illuminating more of the area, we could see bones and torn clothes strewn around leading up to the girl. In front of her feet was the dead, mutilated body of the boy she went with, at least what was left of him.
It's gonna be okay. We're gonna get you out of here,
Mark said, crouching down by the girl. Her head was between her knees and she was sobbing inconsolably. The thing was too close for comfort, slowly crawling on all fours back and forth, almost as though trying to figure out the best method of attack. It was growling and hissing, mainly keeping its eye on the flare.
Mark, I could really use some help.
I said, trying to figure out a solution to this problem. I was ignored, though. He was still trying to calm the girl. The flare's light was dimming, and the thing was becoming more confident now, inching closer as the flame began shrinking. Putting two and two together, I threw the flare at the right and grabbed another to strike. Surprisingly, my throw was a lot more accurate than anticipated, hitting it in the face. What came next was the most horrific and guttural scream I had ever heard. It sounded as though 1,000 mountain lions were screaming their last screams before death. I really pissed it off now. It lunged towards me, no longer caring about the flare in my hand. Rage was the only thing fueling it now. Doing the only thing I could think of, I dove towards its feet as it lunged. My timing was not as precise as I thought, and the feeling of razors cutting me shot across my back. Still rolling from the dive, I noticed it slide and hit the side of the cave wall, releasing another loud shriek. Then loud bangs began echoing as I noticed Mark unloading his handgun into the creature. It was distracted now, and I had to come up with a quick plan. The flare was a few feet away, and in its ever-dimming red light, I noticed a bottle of lighter fluid. It must have come from a backpack that had been ripped open from the thing's nails. Thinking quickly, I began fast crawling towards the bottle, snatching it up before my attention was drawn away. Looking up, I saw Mark had backed away in an opening of the cave wall. The creature was hacking and slashing away at the wall, trying to make its way closer to him, laying out a hellish scream and flinging rock debris all over. Gaining control of myself, I quickly got up and ran towards the creature, opening the bottle of lighter fluid. Gripping it as hard as I could, I began spraying the liquid in X formation as though I was swinging katana. The creature seemed to have taken notice of me the second I was done spraying it. The thing lunged at me, slashing its claws towards my torso as I fell back. I landed in something lukewarm and sticky. Confused as to what it was, I had to focus on the task at hand. The creature hovering over me. It was just watching me, cocking its head from side to side, as though it was meticulously figuring out the best way to dismember and eat me. Trying to crab walk away, I figured out what it was that I tripped on. It was the body of the girl's boyfriend laying there lifeless, and as pale as a ghost. Even in the dim-lit area, I could see the fear that was frozen on his face. The creature was still standing there watching me, breathing heavily in and out, in and out. Then it finally took a step towards me as his jaw sliked open and drool began to pool out. I felt my hand touch something as the creature was going down on all fours. Gripping it, I heard Mark begin to scream and charge the creature with a pocket knife. An ill attempt, though, as the creature backhanded him, swatting him away like a fly. As much of a failure that was, it gave me enough time to figure out what was in my hand. It was one of my flares, and an unlit one at that. Nervously, I untwisted the cap and prepared myself mentally for what was to come. Striking it caused the monstrous head to snap towards me, sounding like a cacophony of bones cracking. It flung itself towards me as I threw the flare at it, making it and the flare connect mid-air. Time seemed to have slowed down as the creature's body ignited into a fury of inferno almost hitting me. The smell of death, burning flesh and hair filled the air as the creature began frantically flinging itself around in hopes of putting out the fire. It was a futile attempt. The damage was already done. The thing fell to its knees, laying out a final hellish screech before slumping to the ground, lying there lifeless, slowly burning away until it will become nothing but ash and bones. Not much more can be said about the whole affair. I do not want to bore you with a bunch more notes about what was in the cave. Mark, the girl, and I got out with minor injuries. I had a few slashes on my back and one on my chest. Mark had a dislocated shoulder and a minor concussion. Then the girl only had a couple of minor scratches and bruises. Multiple bodies and bones were found at the site, but no more of the information was disclosed to me. Mark and I still keep in touch from time to time. He retired from being a ranger, and the girl just got married this year. But Mark and I were invited. It was a beautiful ceremony, and the whole affair of how we met was never brought up. To be continued next week. My new invention allowed me to passively view any scene from history, and I decided to test it by watching The Last Supper of Jesus. But my excitement turned to horror as I saw the bloody body of God laid out on the table, eagerly devoured by 12 apostles as blood-red halos began to form around their heads. And now the stories have come to an end. If you're still awake, well, I hope you fall asleep shortly. And the sounds that you're hearing in the background are going to take center stage for no more than 30 minutes to help you fall asleep or stay asleep. But if you are awake and want to hear more stories, I do have playlists for that as well. Sleep tight and don't let 42 bite.